What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Haunted Beard. Thank you for joining me. Today, I want to talk about a movie that has been on my watch list for quite a while, and I finally got the opportunity to give it a watch, and that is Inside. This is a French film that came out in 2007 and is a part of what is known as New French Extremism. And that includes the handful of movies that were directed and produced in France around the turn of the 21st century that were known and notorious, rather, for their extreme content. And Inside tells the story of this pregnant woman who is just about to give birth to her child. Only one night, she finds herself being tormented by this woman who breaks into her house who wants her unborn baby. And I was aware of Inside's reputation before having watched the movie. I knew it was a part of the French extremism movement, and so I would say I went into this thing with some fairly elevated expectations as far as what I was in store for. And movies like Inside, these usually very extreme, over-the-top, ultra bloody and gory horror movies, are usually hit or miss for me, and it just kind of depends how the, I guess, extreme aspects of it are handled. And I can think to film last year, The Sadness, that came out that I really wasn't a fan of. And it wasn't because the gore was too much for me to handle or whatever, but for me, I just found it very try-hard. And I feel like sometimes a lot of these more extreme horror films just come across as being gory just for the sake of being gory, or just, again, very try-hard, very like, oh, look at how bloody this is. But they don't really serve any sort of purpose beyond that. However, Inside, I actually found quite a bit to, I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but quite a bit that I appreciated. And overall, I found it a pretty memorable and effective experience. Now, first off, the film opens up with a shot of a fetus inside a womb. And after a few seconds, you realize that there is some sort of traumatic incident, and you find out that it's a car crash. And so Inside really lets you know right from the beginning you are in for something pretty extreme, obviously. But I will say that I did find that opening, it's pretty effective and pretty alarming, and I can't say I've really ever seen anything quite like it. Now, as far as the plot goes with Inside, it's a pretty basic stripped down story. There's not a whole lot here, and the vast majority of it takes place at this woman's apartment. Outside of the first maybe 10 minutes or so where she's at the doctor's office and they tell her to come back in the morning, they're going to induce labor, and so she goes home to spend the final night before she's getting ready to give birth to her baby, only, of course, all hell breaks loose that night. And I really found a lot to appreciate visually with Inside. I loved the cinematography and just the visual presentation of it. As I said, a lot of it, almost all of it, takes place inside her apartment. And there is so much of this film, I was kind of surprised how dark it is just from a lighting perspective, but I really liked it. A lot of the film is underexposed and dark, and you can't make out details sometimes, and you can't make out faces, which is very effective when it comes to the woman when she shows up. But there's a lot of just kind of silhouettes and just really nice like kind of backlighting and things like that. And I was really surprised too that like the look of her apartment, it has this sort of like very smoky, hazy, foggy type look to it that I just thought was really effective. And I just really liked, again, the lighting and just the visual presentation of this. I think it worked quite well. And Inside has a handful of very memorable and just well constructed and composed shots. And one of the ones in particular is around the 25 to 30 minute mark, where we first see and notice that the woman has actually entered this lady's apartment. And the lighting just, it works so well because like you can barely see her. You can just barely make out that she's there in the background. and the woman sitting there on the couch. And again, it just has this, it's backlit, and the woman in the back is just in complete shadow, and you can just barely make out the sort of the glow of her face. And again, it just has this whole sort of smoky, hazy look to it. That image I will remember for quite some time. It's just a greatly composed shot. There's another shot later on in the movie where Sarah is laying down in this bed after just this all-out bloodbath, and it's dark out, but there's just enough light to kind of make her out in bed, and she is just completely red, covered in blood. And it's just another great image that I will not forget for quite some time. Now, this next thing I'm about to say might be a little bit extreme and over the top, but I'm going to just make the comparison anyway. I think what Texas Chainsaw Massacre did for chainsaws, I think Inside does for scissors. And you will, every time I see a pair of scissors from now on, there's going to be a part of me that thinks back to this movie. We get this just really great sequence where Sarah, who's the pregnant woman, is asleep in bed, and the woman, who's played by Beatrice Dalle, and I have to talk about her performance, but I'll get there in a minute. But she walks into the room, and she pulls out this pair of scissors, and she starts tracing the point of it along her pregnant stomach. And it's a pretty upsetting scene. It's very creepy and just disturbing. And I like how the editing is handled in this sequence too, as well as some of the sound effects that are used throughout the sequence too, where she finally gets the edge of the scissors and she starts to puncture her belly button. All of a sudden it goes from this slow burn to this just quick cut, rapid fire. Her eyes open up wide, and it's just crazy. And the sound design here too, throughout the film, but particularly in this sequence, I just found really effective, and it really stood out to me, as they really kind of use sound effects and lengthen them to almost create its own kind of musical score. And like in particularly in this sequence, it's like this clicking and popping sound, and later on there's a scene where somebody's being stabbed, and it's like you get this almost what sounds like this guitar feedback sound effect. And there's just some really interesting and creative sound choices and musical score choices. I thought the score and the sound really just stood out in this movie and created a pretty unique experience that really complemented everything and all the insanity that was going on. Now, as I said, I have to talk about Beatrice Dalle's performance. She plays the woman, and this is a movie that has very little dialogue compared to the average film. And a lot of it is just a physical performance. A lot of it is just these two women in the house as the woman is trying to attack Sarah. But Beatrice Dalle is able to do quite a bit with not a whole lot to work with, in terms of she doesn't really say a whole lot in the movie. But man, just her presence and her body language is just really effective and really creepy and really memorable. And there's just something about just the way she moves and just the look on her face and her expressions, and just even the fact that she's dressed in this it's just like a black dress, but man, she just has this creepy, eerie presence about her. And I think her performance is really solid. And even though this is a very stripped down and basic story, the film moves along at a really quick pace, kept my interest, and it adds some nice kind of surprises and unexpected moments as well. They bring in, there's some new people that come into the house who get involved with this, and some police officer shows up, and so that whole ordeal has to get worked out, and the woman has to figure out how to deal with these people who show up and with the police who show up. There's an unexpected and pretty shocking moment where Sarah's mother shows up, and something that happens there that I just did not see coming whatsoever. Now, as good and as effective as I think Inside is, I did have a few issues with it. The first thing is that while I do think the opening of the film is really effective and attention grabbing regarding seeing the actual fetus get into a car crash, it is a CGI image of a baby, and I wouldn't really call much attention to it, because while it obviously doesn't look totally real, the effectiveness of that opening scene, I think, kind of overrides the fact that it is a clearly CGI image. However, the film, in some of the attack sequences, it does this kind of rapid, quick cut back to shots of the fetus inside Sarah's womb. That, again, it just, you can tell it's CGI, and it's just like, I wish they wouldn't have done that. It's a pretty minor complaint, but one thing that I just thought they kind of overused that effect. And another issue that I had is that there is a little bit of this element of mystery built around who the woman is and how does she know so much about Sarah. And it gets to the point later on in the movie where it reveals, who she is. And to me, it's a very sort of obvious and predictable reveal. There's really only, I think, one answer or one reality of who she could be within the context of the movie. And so I found that part a little bit of a lackluster moment, kind of anticlimactic, as I just thought it was a pretty obvious reveal. Now, being that this is a film that is known for its extreme violence and gore, I have to talk about the violence and gore before ending my review. And I'll be honest, as I said earlier on, I went in with some already elevated expectations, and for the most part, going along in the movie, up until you get to about the last 10 minutes, it's definitely bloody, it's definitely intense. I mean, it's involving a woman trying to steal a pregnant woman's baby, okay? So just the content and the subject matter is pretty insane. And yeah, there's some blood and stuff like that. There's some crazy moments, but it wasn't anything, outrageous. It wasn't anything that I was like gonna be scarred for life sort of thing. And then you get to the last 10 minutes and yeah, the last 10 minutes are wow. Now, I won't give away the specifics in case you haven't seen it, but if you have seen the movie, you certainly know the scene that I'm talking about. And I genuinely will tell you, my reaction was I reached up and put my hands over my mouth in shock, as there was this part of me that just did not expect it to go that direction, did not expect that to happen. And so it caught me off guard. And this movie goes there. And I can't remember the last time I actually had one of those genuine moments, okay? And so I got to give the film props. I got to give the film kudos. I mean, it's really why you watch movies like this. I mean, if you can't handle the extreme stuff, why are you watching something that's a part of the French extreme movement, right? So, but yeah, it caught me off guard. It is a pretty shocking and alarming and disturbing sequence that I don't think I will ever forget. And so I got to give the movie some credit for that, because it really went there and did something that I don't think I've ever seen before. So yeah, it's a pretty memorable one. This is a movie that I feel really weird saying I enjoyed. I don't think that that's really the right word, but it is a memorable horror film. And for the most part, I love horror movies, and I think really the horror community in general, we want to watch movies that we remember. We like the movies that scar us a little bit and obviously freak us out and disturb us. And Inside did just that. There's some pretty solid stuff here in Inside. And if you haven't seen it, if you really maybe want to stretch the boundaries a little bit and see what you can handle, give it a watch. It is not something you will forget. So yeah. Those are my thoughts. I have no idea really what to grade this thing. I feel like this is one of those movies that's like the grade just kind of feels insignificant, but I'm probably somewhere around like a 7 to a 7.5, somewhere in that range. But yeah, it's it's a good one. I would say it is a good and effective and memorable horror film that I will remember for quite some time. So those are my thoughts. Hit me up down below though. Would love to hear your thoughts. I know that this one has got quite a reputation, so would love to hear from you. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Like always, hit that subscribe button if you like horror and thriller movie content, because that's all I do here on my channel. And I'll see you next time on The Haunted Beard.